You don't belong here, sweetie. First class is for people who actually pay their way. That was the last thing Keely, the senior flight attendant, said before she ripped my boarding pass in half and threw the confetti pieces in my face. She thought she was protecting the sanctity of her precious cabin from a girl in a hoodie. She thought she had all the power. But she didn't know two things. One, that hoodie cost more than her car. And two, the name on the ticket she just destroyed. It matches the name painted on the side of this airplane. Today, Keely learns that you never judge a passenger by their cover, especially when her father owns the fleet. The fluorescent hum of JFK's Terminal 4 was usually enough to induce a migraine, but today Maya Sterling was too exhausted to care. She adjusted the strap of her battered leather duffel bag, a vintage piece from Italy, that looked worn to the untrained eye, but was virtually priceless, and pulled the hood of her oversized grey sweatshirt further over her head. It had been a brutal semester at Stanford. Finals week had consisted of 4 days without sleep, 3 gallons of iced coffee, and a final thesis on macroeconomic disparities that had drained the last ounce of her social battery. All she wanted was to get on Aerolux Flight 882 to London, curl up in seat 1A, and sleep until the wheels touched the tarmac at Heathrow. She wasn't trying to be noticed. In fact, invisibility was Maya's preferred state. Being the only daughter of Reginald Sterling, the billionaire tycoon who had acquired Aerolux 3 years ago and turned it into the premier transatlantic carrier, came with baggage she didn't like to carry. She preferred the anonymity of sweatpants and no makeup. Maya approached Gate 42. The boarding area was divided into 2 distinct worlds. On the left, a chaotic sea of weary travelers wrestled with crying toddlers and overstuffed carry-ons waiting for economy boarding. On the right, a velvet rope cordoned off a plush crimson carpet leading to the first-class podium. Standing guard at that podium, like a sentinel of snobbery, was Keely Fox. Keely was a legend at Aerolux, but not for the reasons one might hope. With her hair pulled back so tight it seemed to pull her eyelids upward, and a uniform tailored to within an inch of its life, she looked immaculate. She was the lead purser, the queen of the cabin. She was also, according to the whispers in the break room, the meanest woman to ever wear the silver wings. Keely didn't just check tickets, she judged souls. Maya stepped onto the crimson carpet. She was the first one there, 30 minutes before boarding, just wanting to sit in the quiet lounge area reserved for first class. Keely looked up from her computer screen. Her eyes heavily lined with dark makeup swept over Maya. She saw the messy bun, the baggy grey hoodie, the loose sweatpants, and the sneakers that looked a bit scuffed. She didn't see the person. She saw an intruder. "Excuse me," Keely said, her voice dripping with a sickly sweet condescension that was colder than liquid nitrogen. "The line for Group 5 is over there against the wall. You're blocking the carpet." Maya paused, blinking tiredly. She pulled her headphones down around her neck. "I'm sorry." "Economy," Keely said, pointing a manicured finger toward the mass of people on the left. "This is the priority lane, for first class and Diamond Medallion members only. Please move." Maya sighed. She dealt with this often, but usually she had the energy to be charming about it. Today she just reached into her pocket. "I know. I'm on this flight. Seat 1A. She pulled out her phone to show the digital boarding pass, but the battery icon flashed red, and the screen went black. Dead. Great Maya thought. Rookie mistake. "My phone just died," Maya said, keeping her voice calm. "But I have a physical copy in my bag." She dropped her duffel to the floor and unzipped it, rummaging through books and papers. Keely let out a loud, theatrical sigh, checking her watch. "Miss, you are holding up the line." There was no one behind Maya, not a single soul. "I'm the only one here," Maya pointed out, retrieving the printed boarding pass her father's assistant Beatrice had insisted she carry. Beatrice was old school. She didn't trust technology. "Thank you, Beatrice," Maya thought. Maya smoothed out the paper and placed it on the high counter. "Here. Maya Sterling, seat 1A. Keely didn't even look at the name. She stared at the paper as if it were contaminated waste. Then she looked at Maya's hoodie again. "There is no way," Keely muttered, mostly to herself, but loud enough to be heard. She picked up the boarding pass, holding it by the very corner with 2 fingers. She tapped her keyboard aggressively. "I don't see you in the system," Keely lied. The screen clearly showed Sterling Maya in gold letters indicating VVIP status. But Keely's bias was rewriting reality. She saw a young black girl in street clothes and decided that there had been a glitch, a mistake, a hacker. "Check again," Maya said, her tone hardening slightly. "I'm definitely on that flight. Look." Keely leaned over the podium, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "I don't know how you printed this fake pass. Maybe you have a friend in ticketing, or maybe you're just delusional, but we don't let non-revenue standbys or upgrade scammers into the first-class cabin on my flight. We have high-profile clients today. Senators, tech moguls." She looked pointedly at Maya's scuffed sneakers. "People who don't want to smell fast food." Maya stiffened. "I don't smell like fast food. And this isn't a fake pass." "It's invalid," Keely declared. "Scan it," Maya challenged. Keely narrowed her eyes. It was a duel now. She grabbed the scanner gun and aimed it at the barcode on the paper, fully expecting it to error out. Beep! A green light flashed on the console. "Seat 1A, confirmed." For a second, Keely froze. The machine had accepted it. But Keely Fox did not accept defeat. Her ego was too large to fit in the overhead bin. She convinced herself it was a system error, a computer glitch. There was no way this girl could afford a $12,000 ticket. "Machine error," Keely announced loudly, addressing the few people now gathering behind Maya. "Technical difficulties, folks. Just a moment while I clear the queue." She looked back at Maya with a smirk that could curdle milk. "The system is malfunctioning. It happens when people try to use fraudulent codes." "So, it beeped green," Maya said, her patience fraying. "It's valid. You're just profiling me." "I am doing my job," Keely snapped, "and my job is to ensure the safety and comfort of our premium passengers. You are clearly agitated. That's a security risk." At that moment, a man walked up behind Maya. He was the archetype of who Keely wanted to serve. Tall, wearing a bespoke navy suit, carrying a Toomey briefcase, and checking a Rolex Submariner. "Is there a problem here?" the man asked. His voice was rich and impatient. Keely's face instantly transformed. The snarl vanished, replaced by a beaming, flirtatious smile. "Oh, Mr. Carmichael, so good to see you again. My apologies. We just have a situation with a passenger attempting to board with invalid credentials." Mr. Carmichael Preston, according to the luggage tag, looked down at Maya. He sneered. "Well, can she move? I have a pre-flight conference call." "Of course, Mr. Carmichael," Keely cooed. She turned back to Maya, her eyes dead and cold. "Step aside," Keely ordered. "Security will deal with you." "I'm not moving," Maya said, grounding her feet. "I paid for this seat. Well, My family did. It's my seat. Keely's patience snapped. She wasn't just going to deny Maya. She was going to destroy her. The tension at Gate 42 was thick enough to choke on. A small crowd had gathered, watching the spectacle. Most were silent, looking at their phones, avoiding eye contact. A few were filming. Maya looked at Keely. You are making a massive mistake. I'm asking you politely to scan the ticket again, and let me board. And I'm telling you, Keely spat, her voice rising so everyone could hear, that Aerolux has standards. We don't just let anyone wander into the front of the plane because they printed a piece of paper at the library. Keely looked at Preston Carmichael, seeking an ally. Can you believe the audacity? Preston chuckled, shaking his head. Unbelievable. Honey, take the hint. Go back to row 45, or the bus station. Maya ignored him. She focused entirely on the flight attendant. My name is Maya Sterling. Does that name ring a bell to you? Keely laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. Sterling, like the owner. Oh, honey, please. I've heard every lie in the book. Do you know who my father is the oldest trick in the industry. If you were a Sterling, you wouldn't be dressed like that, and you wouldn't be standing here arguing with me. You'd be on a private jet. My father believes in commercial travel to understand the customer experience, Maya said calmly, something you clearly don't understand. That struck a nerve. Keely's face flushed red beneath her foundation. That is enough, Keely shouted. She snatched the paper boarding pass from the counter where Maya had left it. This, Keely said, holding the document up like a piece of evidence in a murder trial, is trash. Maya's eyes went wide. Don't, Keely maintained intense eye contact with Maya. A cruel, triumphant smirk curled her lips. With deliberate slowness, she placed her hands on either side of the boarding pass. Right. The sound was shockingly loud in the quiet gate area. Keely tore the ticket straight down the middle, right through the barcode, right through the name Sterling. She didn't stop there. She put the halves together and tore them again. And again. Maya stood frozen. She wasn't scared. She was in shock at the sheer unprofessionalism. She had grown up watching her father build this company on principles of respect and service. Seeing this woman desecrate those values in real time was surreal. Keely took the handful of confetti, which used to be a first-class transatlantic ticket, and tossed it into the air toward Maya. The pieces fluttered down, landing on Maya's grey hoodie and the red carpet. Oops, Keely said, her voice dripping with mock innocence. Looks like your ticket is gone. No ticket, no flight. You just destroyed my property, Maya whispered. I disposed of litter, Keely corrected. She turned her attention to Preston Carmichael, flashing that blinding fake smile again. Mr. Carmichael, I am so sorry for the delay. Please step right through. We have a glass of Dom Perignon waiting for you in 1A. Maya blinked. 1A. That's my seat. Not anymore, Keely said breezily. It was open in the system since I voided your fraudulent transaction, and Mr. Carmichael is a diamond member. I just upgraded him. Complimentary. Preston Carmichael looked at Maya, laughed, and stepped over the torn pieces of her ticket. Tough break, kid. Maybe next time. He scanned his phone. The machine beeped green and he strolled down the jet bridge, whistling. Maya stood alone on the red carpet, the white scraps of paper surrounding her feet like snow. Now, Keely said, leaning over the podium, her face close to Maya's. You have two choices. You can go stand in the back of the economy line and wait to see if there's an open middle seat near the toilets. I might let you on if you behave. Or you can call security, and I can have you banned from the airline permanently for harassment. Which will it be? Maya looked down at the torn paper. She looked at the closed door of the jet bridge where her seat had just walked away. Then she looked at Keely. A strange calmness settled over Maya. The exhaustion evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her dead phone. "I need to make a call," Maya said quietly. "Use the payphones by the restrooms." Keely dismissed her, turning back to her computer. "Next in line for first class, please." Maya didn't move toward the restrooms. She walked over to a nearby waiting chair, sat down and reached into her bag for her portable charger power bank. She plugged it in. The Apple logo appeared on the screen. She wasn't calling customer service. She wasn't calling the police. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the one labeled Dad Personal. She watched Keely greeting the next wealthy passenger, bowing and scraping, acting the perfect servant. Keely had no idea that the girl in the hoodie was about to bring the entire sky down on her head. Maya pressed call. "Hi, Daddy," Maya said when the voice answered on the second ring. "I'm at JFK. We have a problem, a really big problem. Daddy, I'm at JFK. We have a problem." On the other end of the line, sitting in a glass-walled office in Chicago, overlooking Lake Michigan, Reginald Sterling paused. He was in the middle of reviewing the quarterly acquisition reports for a new European hub, but the tone in his daughter's voice stopped him cold. It wasn't fear Maya didn't scare easily. It was resignation. It was the sound of someone who had tried to do things the right way and had been punished for it. "Are you hurt?" Reginald asked, his voice dropping an octave. The room full of executives fell silent instantly. When the boss lowered his voice, you listened. "No, not physically," Maya said, eyeing Keely, who was now aggressively typing on her keyboard, occasionally shooting venomous glances in Maya's direction. "But I've been denied boarding. My ticket was destroyed, physically ripped up in front of everyone, and my seat was given to a Mr. Carmichael." Reginald was silent for 3 seconds. "Someone ripped up a first-class ticket." "My daughter's ticket. She thinks it's fake," Maya whispered, shielding the phone as a couple walked by, staring at her. "She thinks I'm a fraud. She profiled me Dad. The hoodie, the hair. She didn't even check the manifest properly." "Put her on the phone," Reginald said. The calm in his voice was terrifying. It was the calm of the ocean before a tsunami. "She won't talk to you," Maya said. "She just called security. I think she's trying to have me arrested." At the podium, Keely hung up the landline phone with a satisfied clack. She smoothed her skirt, grabbed the microphone for the PA system, and cleared her throat. Her voice boomed through the gate area, echoing off the high ceilings. "Ladies and gentlemen waiting for Flight 882 to London, we apologize for the delay in boarding. We are currently dealing with a security breach involving a disruptive passenger. Please remain patient while we ensure the cabin is safe for our premium travelers." Every head turned. 200 pairs of eyes locked onto Maya. It was a masterclass in public humiliation. Keely hadn't just called security. She had branded Maya a threat. She had weaponized the annoyance of tired travelers against a 20-year-old girl. "Look at her," a woman in the front row of the economy seating whispered loudly. "She looks like she's on drugs or something. Why doesn't she just leave?" "Probably trying to sneak on," a man muttered. "Kids these days have no respect." Maya felt her face burn. She squeezed her phone. "Dad, they're staring at me. She just announced to the whole gate that I'm a security risk." "Stay right there, Maya," Reginald commanded. "Do not move. Do not leave that gate. I am calling the station manager directly. And Maya..." "Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm fixing this. Now." The line went dead. Maya put the phone down, her hand trembling slightly. She looked up to find Keely standing directly over her. "I thought I told you to leave," Keely sneered. She had come out from behind the podium to loom over Maya. "Calling your boyfriend to come pick you up. Make sure he brings bail money." "I was calling my father," Maya said, her voice steady, despite the pounding in her chest. "Oh," Keely made a pouty face. "Does Daddy know his little girl is a liar?" "You're going to regret this," Maya said softly. "I promise you, Keely, you are going to regret this in about 5 minutes. Keely laughed. "The only thing I regret is that security is taking so long." As if on cue, the heavy doors near the TSA checkpoint swung open. 2 Port Authority police officers, hands resting on their belts, marched down the concourse. They looked serious. They looked ready for a fight. Keely's eyes lit up. She waved them over frantically. "Officers over here." "This is the one?" The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Maya remained seated, clutching her dead phone and the battery pack looking small and defenseless against the approaching authority. But inside the steel of the Sterling bloodline was hardening. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She waited. The 2 officers, Officer Miller and Officer Davis, approached the seating area. Miller was older, weary-looking, while Davis was young, and clearly eager for some action. "What seems to be the problem here, ma'am?" Officer Miller asked Keely, though his eyes were on Maya. Keely launched into her performance. She pointed a shaking finger at Maya. "This individual attempted to breach the first-class cabin with a fraudulent boarding pass. When I caught her, she became belligerent. She refused to leave the secure area. She's been harassing other passengers, and she threatened me." "I did not," Maya said, standing up slowly. She kept her hands visible. "I had a valid ticket. She ripped it up. You can see the pieces on the floor over there." Officer Davis stepped forward, invading Maya's personal space. "Ma'am, I need to see your ID and boarding pass." "I don't have the boarding pass," Maya said, gesturing to the confetti on the red carpet. "Because she destroyed it." "So you have no proof of travel?" Davis asked, his hand hovering near his handcuffs. "My ID is in my bag," Maya said, moving to reach for it. "Don't reach," Davis barked, putting a hand on her shoulder to stop her. "Keep your hands where I can see them." "Hey," a voice shouted from the crowd. It was a young guy with a camera filming. "She didn't do anything." "That flight attendant ripped her ticket up. I got it on video." "Back up," Officer Miller warned the cameraman. "Everyone back up." Keely smirked. "See, she's inciting a riot. She needs to be removed immediately. We have a flight to board." Officer Miller looked at Maya. "Miss, you're coming with us. We can sort this out at the precinct. You are trespassing." "I'm not trespassing," Maya said, her voice rising. "I'm a customer. Check the computer. If she scans my passport, it will show up." "I already checked." Keely lied smoothly. "She is not in the system. She is a ghost." Officer Miller sighed. He grabbed Maya's arm. "Let's go, miss. Don't make us drag you." "Get your hands off me." Maya pulled her arm back. "Resisting," Davis shouted. He grabbed her other arm and twisted it behind her back. Maya winced in pain. The cold metal of handcuffs clicked around her left wrist. "Stop," Maya cried out. "You are making a mistake. That is enough." The voice didn't come from the police. It came from the jet bridge. The door to the plane flew open with a bang. Standing there was Captain James O'Malley, a 4-stripe veteran pilot with 30 years of experience. He was wearing his hat and his face was pale as a sheet. "Unhand that passenger immediately," Captain O'Malley roared, rushing down the ramp. Keely turned, confused. "Captain, it's okay, security is handling the disturbance, so we can push back. I know we're running a few minutes late." "Quiet," O'Malley snapped at her. He didn't even look at her. He looked at the police officers. "Officers, release her. Now!" Officer Davis paused, holding the handcuff that was half-latched. "Captain, this woman is a security risk," the gate agent stated. "The gate agent is an idiot," O'Malley shouted, shocking the entire terminal. "Do you know who is on the sat phone in the cockpit right now? Do you know who is holding this aircraft on the ground?" Keely's smile faltered. "Captain, what are you talking about? It's just some girl with a fake ticket." "A fake ticket." O'Malley stepped over the velvet rope, ignoring the protocols. He walked right up to Maya, who was rubbing her wrist where the officer had grabbed her. The captain, a man who commanded massive Boeings and hundreds of lives, took his hat off. He bowed his head slightly to the girl in the grey hoodie. "Miss Sterling," the captain said, his voice trembling slightly. "I am deeply, deeply sorry. I received the call from headquarters just seconds ago." The silence in Terminal 4 was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. Keely's face went slack. "Sterling," she whispered. Maya looked at the captain. She straightened her hoodie. "Thank you, Captain O'Malley. My father said he knows you." "Yes, ma'am. I've flown him for 10 years, O'Malley said. He turned to the police officers. "This is Maya Sterling, the daughter of Reginald Sterling." He pointed a finger at the ceiling encompassing the terminal, the plane, and the logo on the wall. "The man who owns this airline, the man who signs my paycheck, and yours." He pointed at Keely. Officer Miller's eyes went wide. He immediately let go of Maya's arm and took a step back. "The owner—" "Oh, God," Officer Davis muttered quickly, unclipping the handcuff from her wrist. "Ma'am, we were told." They both looked at Keely. Keely felt the blood drain from her entire body. Her stomach dropped through the floor. The world started to spin. Sterling. The name on the torn paper, the name she had laughed at. "No," Keely stammered, backing up until she hit the podium. That's impossible." She looked. She was wearing sweats. She can wear whatever she damn well pleases," a new voice boomed. Running down the terminal corridor, tie flapping over his shoulder, sweating profusely, was Mr. Henderson, the JFK station manager for Aerolux. He was a man who usually never left his air-conditioned office. He had sprinted the entire length of Concourse B. He skidded to a halt in front of the group, gasping for air. He looked at Maya, then at the captain, and finally, with eyes full of terror and rage at Keely. "What?" Henderson wheezed, pointing a shaking finger at Keely. "Have you done, Mr. Henderson?" Keely's voice was a high-pitched squeak. I followed protocol. She looked suspicious. You thought, Henderson roared. "Mr. Sterling is on the line. He is watching the security feed from the gate live. He just saw you tear up his daughter's ticket." Keely looked up at the black dome of the security camera mounted above the gate. The red light was blinking, steady and unblinking. It felt like the eye of a dragon, staring directly at her. "He wants to speak to you," Henderson said, extending his cell phone toward Keely. "Now?" Keely's hands shook so badly she could barely take the phone. The crowd was no longer whispering. They were watching the execution. "Hello," Keely whispered into the phone. The voice on the other end was not shouting. It was icy precise and loud enough that Maya could hear it from where she stood. "This is Reginald Sterling," the voice said. "I want you to look at my daughter." Keely looked at Maya, Maya stood tall, her chin up, her expression unreadable. "I'm looking," Keely choked out. "Good," Reginald said. "Now apologize. And then hand the phone to the police officer next to you. I have instructions for him regarding theft and destruction of private property." Keely felt the tears welling up. "Mr. Sterling, please, I didn't know. I—" "Apologize." Reginald's voice cracked like a whip. "I'm sorry," Keely sobbed, looking at Maya. "I'm so sorry, Miss Sterling. I judged you. I was wrong. Please. I have a mortgage. I have kids." Maya looked at the woman who just moments ago had mocked her for being poor, who had treated her like garbage because of the color of her skin and the cut of her clothes. "You ripped up my ticket," Maya said calmly, "and you gave my seat away." Maya turned to the captain. "Captain who is in seat 1A. "A Mr. Preston Carmichael," the captain said with a scowl. "Is the door open?" Maya asked. "For you, Miss Sterling, the door is always open," the captain said. Maya turned to the station manager. "Mr. Henderson, I want to board, but I can't. Someone is in my seat." Mr. Henderson straightened his tie. A vicious bureaucratic efficiency took over. He wanted to save his own skin, and the best way to do that was to destroy the person who caused this mess, and to fix the problem. "Captain," Henderson said, "come with me. We are going to deboard Mr. Carmichael." "And her?" Officer Miller asked, pointing at Keely, who was still holding the phone, weeping. Maya took the phone gently from Keely's hand. "Thanks, Dad. I'll take it from here." She hung up. "Officer," Maya said, looking at the two policemen. "This woman destroyed a ticket valued at $12,000. She also filed a false police report, claiming I was violent, which, she pointed to the guy filming, is clearly a lie. Do your job." As Maya turned to walk toward the jet bridge, flanked by the captain and the station manager, she heard the sound she had been waiting for. Click, click. It wasn't the sound of her handcuffs. It was the sound of cuffs locking around Keely's wrists. "Keely Fox," Officer Miller said, his voice void of sympathy. "You are under arrest for destruction of property and filing a false report." But the drama wasn't over. Maya still had one more person to deal with. The man in seat 1A. The walk down the jet bridge felt like a transition between dimensions. Behind Maya lay the chaos of the terminal. The shouting, the flashing cameras, and the sobbing former flight attendant now in police custody. Ahead lay the hushed, pressurized sanctuary of the aircraft. But the sanctuary was currently occupied by a usurper. Captain O'Malley led the way, his shoulders set in a line of grim determination. Behind him was Mr. Henderson, the station manager, who was wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Maya brought up the rear. She didn't swagger. She didn't smirk. She just walked with the heavy, tired gait of someone who had been forced to fight a war she didn't start. They stepped onto the plane. The air smelled of recycled oxygen, expensive leather, and fresh brewing coffee. In seat 1A, Preston Carmichael was the picture of unbothered arrogance. He had already reclined the seat slightly. His suit jacket was hung neatly in the closet. He was sipping a flute of Krug Grande Cuvée and reading the Wall Street Journal on his tablet. He looked like a king on his throne. He didn't even look up when the captain approached. "Sir," Captain O'Malley said, his voice firm but professional. Preston waved a hand dismissively, without looking up from his screen. "If this is about the pre-departure refill, keep it coming. And tell the purser I want the steak medium rare, not rubbery like last time." "Mr. Carmichael," the captain said louder this time, "I need you to look at me." Preston sighed, a long, exaggerated exhalation of annoyance. He lowered the tablet. What is there a delay if we are sitting on the tarmac for an hour? I'm going to need another glass. Then he saw the entourage. He saw the captain. He saw the sweating station manager. And then, standing behind them, he saw the girl in the grey hoodie. Preston let out a short, incredulous laugh. You have got to be kidding me. You brought the stowaway onto the plane. What is this, a charity tour? Mr. Carmichael. Mr. Henderson stepped forward, trying to exert authority. There has been a misunderstanding regarding the seating assignments. The seat you are currently occupying was assigned to this young woman. It was cancelled in error by a staff member who has since been relieved of duty. Preston's eyes narrowed. Relieved of duty. That shark of a woman at the gate. Good. She was annoying. But she gave me this seat. Possession is 9/10 of the law, pal. I'm settled. My bags are up. He pointed to the overhead bin. We have reaccommodated you, Henderson said quickly. We have a lovely seat for you in row 12. Comfort Plus. Extra leg room. The silence that followed was deafening. Row 12. Preston repeated the number as if it were a contagious disease. You want me to move from international first class to Comfort Plus for her. He gestured a thumb at Maya. Look at her. She looks like she's here to clean the plane, not fly in it. Maya stepped past the station manager. She was done with proxies. I'm not here to clean the plane, Maya said, her voice quiet, but carrying through the small cabin. I'm here to fly home, in the seat my father paid for. Your father? Preston scoffed. What did he sell, a few used cars? Listen, sweetie, I'm a Diamond Medallion member. I spend 200 grand a year with this airline. I practically own this plane. Maya couldn't help it. A small, dry smile touched her lips. Actually, Maya said. You don't? Captain O'Malley stepped in. His patience evaporated. Mr. Carmichael, let me be crystal clear. The young woman standing before you is Maya Sterling. Her father is Reginald Sterling. He owns Aerolux. He owns the plane. He owns the seat you are sitting in. And right now he is on the phone with the tower, effectively grounding this flight until you are removed from his daughter's seat. Preston frozen. The glass of champagne hovered halfway to his mouth. He looked at the captain, looking for the lie. He saw none. He looked at Henderson, who nodded vigorously. Then he looked at Maya. He really looked at her this time. He looked past the hoodie and saw the specific, intelligent set of her eyes, eyes that were currently featured on the cover of Forbes magazine, in the seat pocket in front of him, in a feature about the next generation of business leaders. His face turned a shade of puce that matched the carpet. Preston stammered. I didn't know. Ignorance is not an excuse for being a jerk, Maya said. But, look. Preston tried to pivot his voice, taking on a desperate, wheedling tone. Miss Sterling, surely we can work something out. I have a very important meeting in London. My back is terrible. I really need the lie-flat seat. I'm happy to write you a check right now. $5,000. For your trouble. I don't want your money, Maya said. I want my seat. 10,000, Preston pressed. Cash. Sir, Captain O'Malley barked. You are delaying a transatlantic flight. You have two choices. Choice A. You gather your belongings, move to seat 12B, and we depart. Choice B, you refuse. I declare you a disruptive passenger, and the Port Authority officers, waiting on the jet bridge, come in here and drag you off. In that scenario, you don't go to London. You go to jail. Preston looked at the door. He could see the blue uniforms of Officers Miller and Davis waiting in the hallway. He looked around the cabin. The other first-class passengers were staring. A woman in 2A was hiding a smile behind her hand. Preston Carmichael, the man who thought he ruled the world, realized he had been outranked. "Fine," he spat. He slammed the champagne glass down on the tray table so hard the stem snapped, spilling gold liquid over the white linen. "I'm leaving," Preston snarled. He stood up, ripping his jacket from the hanger. He grabbed his briefcase. "My bag is in the bin," he barked at Henderson. "Get it." "You can get it yourself," Maya said. Preston glared at her with pure hatred. He reached up, yanked his Toomey bag down, and nearly hit a flight attendant who had rushed over to clean the spill. He marched down the aisle, shoving past Maya. As he passed her, he leaned in. "You little rich brat. You think you're special." "No," Maya said, meeting his eyes. "I think I'm a customer. You should try being a decent one sometime." He stormed out of the first-class cabin, past the curtain, and into the humiliating walk toward row 12, where the overhead bins were already full and the middle seat was waiting. The atmosphere in the first-class cabin shifted the moment Preston disappeared behind the curtain. It was as if a pressure valve had been released. The new flight attendant, a young woman named Jennifer, looked terrified. Her hands were shaking as she picked up the broken glass and the champagne-soaked tablecloth. She was clearly the junior crew member likely pulled from the economy galley to replace Keeley at the last second. "Miss Sterling," Jennifer stammered, avoiding eye contact. "I am so sorry about the mess. I'll have this cleaned in 30 seconds. Please take seat 1B while I fix 1A. Can I get you anything? Water, champagne, caviar?" Maya looked at Jennifer. The girl looked like she was about to faint. She was probably thinking that one wrong move would end her career just like it had for Keeley. "Jennifer Wright?" Maya asked gently. Jennifer froze. "Yes, ma'am." "Breathe," Maya said. She dropped her heavy duffel bag on the floor. "I'm not going to fire you. I'm not going to yell at you. I just want to sit down." "Right. Yes, of course." Jennifer frantically wiped the tray table. Captain O'Malley came out of the cockpit one last time before pushback. He stood in front of Maya. "Miss Sterling," he said softly, "I want to personally apologize again on behalf of the crew. What happened at the gate was unacceptable. I've already filed a report with HR and operations." "Thanks, Captain," Maya said finally, sinking into the plush leather of seat 1B while Jennifer finished with 1A. Can we go? I really just want to sleep." "We are pushing back in 2 minutes," O'Malley promised. "I'll make up the time in the air. We'll have you in London ahead of schedule." He returned to the cockpit. The door clicked locked. Maya moved over to seat 1A once it was pristine again. She buckled her belt. She didn't take off her hoodie. She didn't ask for a blanket. She just stared out the window at the rainy tarmac of JFK. Her phone buzzed. She had plugged it into the seat's USB port. It was a text from her father. "Dad Beatrice tells me you're on board." "You okay?" Maya typed back slowly. "Maya, I'm okay. Just tired." "It was ugly, Dad." "Dad, I saw the video. Someone sent it to PR. It's already trending. Flight attendant from hell versus secret CEO daughter." Maya groaned audibly. "Of course it was trending. Dad Keeley Fox has been terminated effective immediately, pending legal action for the damage to your property, and I'm instituting a mandatory retraining program for all ground staff starting Monday. No one gets treated like that on my airline. No one." Maya looked at the text. It was justice, sure. But it felt heavy. She looked around the cabin. The other passengers were stealing glances at her. They weren't looking at her with annoyance anymore. They were looking at her with fear and awe. She was the girl who could snap her fingers and make people disappear. She hated it. "Excuse me, Miss Sterling." Maya looked up. It was Jennifer holding a silver tray with a warm towel and a glass of sparkling water. "We're about to take off," Jennifer said, her voice trembling slightly. "But I wanted to bring you this, and, Jennifer hesitated. She looked around to make sure the other passengers weren't listening. "I just wanted to say, thank you," Jennifer whispered. Maya frowned. "Thank you for what?" "Keely," Jennifer said, her voice dropping to a hush. She's been the purser on this route for 3 years. She made my life a living hell. She steals tips. She yells at us in the galley. She makes the junior staff cry on almost every flight. We reported her a dozen times, but she always talked her way out of it. She was untouchable. Jennifer looked at the empty jet bridge where Keely had been led away in cuffs. "Nobody ever stood up to her," Jennifer said, "until you. So, thank you." Maya softened. She saw the relief in the young woman's eyes. It wasn't just about Maya being a Karen or a billionaire's brat. By standing her ground, she had inadvertently popped a blister that had been festering in the company for years. "You're welcome, Jennifer," Maya said, taking the water. "But do me a favor. Anything, ma'am. Stop shaking." Maya smiled. "And treat me like a normal passenger. If I fall asleep and drool, just throw a blanket over me. Don't wake me up for the meal service." Jennifer let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for 20 minutes. She smiled back, a real smile this time. "Yes, Miss Sterling. Understood." As the plane began to taxi, the massive engines roaring to life, Maya leaned her head against the window. She watched the lights of New York City drift by. She thought about the power dynamics of the world, how a piece of paper, a ticket, could define your worth, how a hoodie could make you a suspect, and a last name could make you a god. It was broken. The whole system was broken. Well, Maya thought, closing her eyes as the G-force of the takeoff pressed her into the seat. At least I can fix this airline. One bad apple at a time. From the back of the plane, in the uncomfortable confines of row 12, Preston Carmichael was trying to recline his seat, but the mechanism was jammed. He kicked the seat in front of him in frustration. "Sir." A flight attendant, a large man named Dave, loomed over him. "Stop kicking the seat, or I'll zip-tie you to the armrests. We heard about what you did up front. One more peep, and you're banned for life." Preston sank down into his seat, defeated. High above the clouds, Maya Sterling finally fell asleep. The descent into London Heathrow was smooth, the grey dawn of the English morning breaking over the wings. For Maya, the 7-hour flight had been a peaceful reprieve. For Preston Carmichael, back in seat 12B, it had been a purgatory of cramped knees, a crying baby in 13A, and the distinct lack of warm cookies. When the seatbelt sign pinged off at the gate, the curtains between first class and economy remained drawn. Maya was the first to deplane, grabbing her battered leather duffel. Waiting for her at the end of the jet bridge was not just a ground agent, but the director of Aerolux UK operations. A woman named Sarah Jenkins, flanked by 2 security officers. "Miss Sterling," Sarah said, extending a hand. "Welcome to London. Your father has been in touch. We have a car waiting to take you directly to the hotel." "Thank you, Sarah," Maya said. She paused. "Is the passenger from 12B coming off soon?" "We held the economy cabin," Sarah noted professionally. Standard procedure when VIPs deplane. Let him off, Maya said. I want him to see me. A moment later, the stream of passengers began. Preston Carmichael stumbled out, looking haggard. His suit was wrinkled, his tie was crooked, and he looked like he hadn't slept a wink. He saw Maya standing there, flanked by executives looking fresh and composed. He stopped. He opened his mouth to say something, maybe an insult, maybe an apology, but Sarah Jenkins stepped forward. Mr. Carmichael, she asked. Yes, he croaked. We have been informed that your return ticket has been cancelled, she said pleasantly. Aerolux has placed you on our no-fly list effective immediately. You will need to find an alternative carrier for your journey home. Preston's jaw dropped. You can't do that. I have rights. I'm a platinum. You were a disruptive passenger who verbally abused a guest of the owner. Sarah cut him off. We have refunded the unused portion of your ticket to your card. Have a nice stay in London. Maya didn't say a word. She just adjusted her backpack, gave Preston a small, pitying nod, and walked away toward the VIP immigration channel. But the karma wasn't done yet. The universe had one final twist in store for Preston Carmichael. Preston had flown to London for one reason: the pitch of his life. He was the CEO of a mid-sized tech logistics firm, Logitech, and his company was bleeding money. He needed a bailout. He needed an acquisition, and the only company with pockets deep enough to save him was Sterling Global Ventures. He had never met the board of Sterling Global. He had only dealt with lower-level acquisitions managers. This meeting was his Hail Mary. He adjusted his tie in the reflection of the glass skyscraper in Canary Wharf. He looked tired, but he tried to put on his game face. Focus, Preston, he told himself. Charm them. Dazzle them. He was ushered into the penthouse boardroom. The view was spectacular, overlooking the Thames. Sitting at the far end of the long mahogany table was an older man with silver hair and a terrifyingly sharp suit, Reginald Sterling. Preston felt a flicker of recognition at the name, but his ego pushed it down. Sterling. Common name. Mr. Carmichael, Reginald said, not standing up. Please, sit. Mr. Sterling, Preston beamed, putting on his best fake smile, the same one he used on flight attendants, right before treating them like dirt. It is an absolute honor. I've admired your business acumen for decades. Have you? Reginald asked, his voice flat. Oh, absolutely. Preston opened his briefcase. I think you'll find Logitech aligns perfectly with your portfolio. We value efficiency, class, and excellence. Excellence, Reginald repeated. Interesting word. I value character. Agreed. Preston nodded vigorously. Character is everything. Glad you think so, Reginald said. I'd like to introduce you to the head of our Youth Outreach and Ethics Division. She has the final veto on all new acquisitions. The door behind Preston opened. Sorry I'm late, a voice said. Traffic on the M4 was a nightmare. Preston froze. He knew that voice. He turned around slowly. Walking into the room wearing a sharp black blazer over a grey hoodie holding a Starbucks cup was Maya. She stopped when she saw him. She didn't look surprised. She looked amused. Oh, Maya said, taking the seat next to her father. It's you. Preston looked from Maya to Reginald. The realization hit him like a freight train. Sterling. Reginald Sterling. Maya Sterling. The owner of the airline. The girl in the hoodie. You? Preston whispered. You're the board member. I'm the heir. Maya corrected him. She took a sip of her coffee. And Daddy. This is the man I texted you about. The one who told me I belonged in the back of the bus. Or, well, the plane. Reginald Sterling closed the folder in front of him. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. "Mr. Carmichael," Reginald said, standing up. "My daughter has an excellent intuition for people. She told me you were arrogant, rude, and dismissive of those you deem beneath you." It was a stressful day," Preston stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. I wasn't myself." "On the contrary," Maya said softly. "I think you were exactly yourself. You showed me exactly who you are when you think no one powerful is watching." "We don't do business with men like you," Reginald said coldly. "The deal is off. Sterling Global will not be acquiring Logitech." "Please." Preston begged, his dignity gone. "My company. We'll go bankrupt without this capital. I have employees. Then you should have thought about that before you treated a young woman like garbage," Reginald said. "Security will escort you out." 2 weeks later, the story of the Gate 42 incident had circulated the globe. The video of Keely ripping the ticket had 40 million views. Keely Fox was charged with criminal mischief and destruction of property. She pleaded guilty to avoid jail time, but her career in aviation was over. She was blacklisted from every airline, major and minor. She ended up moving back to her hometown, working the register at a grocery store, where every customer was a reminder that she was there to serve, not to judge. Preston Carmichael's company filed for Chapter 11, bankruptcy 3 months later. His reputation as a toxic leader, combined with the failed merger, made him a pariah in the business world. He lost his penthouse, his car, and his diamond medallion status. But the biggest change happened at Aerolux. Maya Sterling didn't just go back to college. She worked with her father to launch the Sterling Standard, a mandatory training program for all 50,000 employees. It focused on unconscious bias empathy and the simple rule that every passenger, whether in seat 1A or 45E, deserved dignity. Maya still traveled in sweatpants. She still wore her hair in a messy bun. But now, when she walked up to a gate, she didn't need to say a word. The world knew who she was. And more importantly, she knew who she was. She wasn't just a billionaire's daughter. She was the girl who grounded the untouchables, proving that in the end, kindness is the only currency that really matters. And that is how a ripped ticket and a judgmental attitude cost a flight attendant her career and a CEO his entire company. It's a brutal reminder that character isn't defined by the price of your suit or the class of your seat, but by how you treat people who can do absolutely nothing for you. Keely and Preston learned the hard way that when you try to tear someone else down, you usually end up burying yourself under the wreckage. What would you have done if you were in Maya's shoes? Would you have stayed calm, or would you have lost it? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind. You never know who you're talking to. The sound of tearing paper echoed louder than the jet engines outside. It wasn't just a boarding pass. It was an act of war. Beatrice, the senior flight attendant, sneered as the pieces of the first-class ticket fluttered to the dirty terminal floor. She looked at the young girl in the oversized hoodie and whispered, "We don't allow fraud on my plane. Go back to economy, or go to jail." She thought she was disciplining a scammer. She didn't know she had just declared war on the daughter of the man who signed her paychecks. This is the story of how one act of prejudice brought down an entire career. The air inside JFK's Terminal 4 was thick with the scent of stale pretzels and the palpable anxiety of holiday travel. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, rain lashed against the fuselage of the massive Boeing 707, sitting at gate B-42, emblazoned with the navy and gold livery of Vanguard Airways. Beatrice van der Waal stood at the precipice of the jet bridge, her posture rigid, her uniform pressed to a razor's edge. Beatrice was 54, tired, and currently fueled by a dangerous cocktail of caffeine and resentment. She had been flying with Vanguard for 25 years. She had survived the merger with Continental, the budget cuts of 2008, and the pension freeze of 2015. She wore her seniority like a loaded weapon. Today, her patience was non-existent. The flight to London Heathrow was overbooked. The catering crew was late loading the vegan meals, and her feet were already throbbing in her regulation heels. She scanned the line of passengers with the eyes of a hawk looking for a field mouse. She hated the upgrades, the people who used miles or credit card points to sneak into the world of luxury she believed belonged to the truly elite and the crew who served them. Then she saw her. Maya Anderson was standing in the priority lane. Maya was 22, though she looked younger with her hair pulled back in messy braids and a face free of makeup. She wore a faded grey university hoodie, black leggings and battered Converse sneakers. A backpack hung off one shoulder and she was scrolling through a playlist on her phone, looking entirely unbothered. Beatrice's lip curled. To her, Maya represented everything wrong with modern travel, sloppy, disrespectful, and clearly out of place. "Excuse me," Beatrice barked, stepping away from the podium, where the gate agent, a nervous young man named Timothy, was processing tickets. Maya looked up, sliding her headphones down to her neck. "Yes." Her voice was soft, polite. "This is the priority lane." Beatrice said, her voice projecting loud enough for the business-class passengers behind Maya to hear. "Group 1 only. Economy boarding is in 30 minutes. You need to step aside." Maya blinked, confused. She reached into her back pocket. "Oh, I know. I'm in Group 1, Seat 2A. Beatrice scoffed a short, sharp sound that silenced the nearby conversation. "Seat 2A is a first-class suite, miss. It costs $12,000 one way. I highly doubt you're in 2A. "I have my boarding pass right here," Maya said, extending a printed ticket toward the scanner. Beatrice snatched the paper from Maya's hand before it could reach the red laser. She held it up to the light, squinting at it theatrically. "Anderson." She read the name, then looked back at Maya with a look of withering scrutiny. "And how exactly did you acquire this Ms. Anderson? Did you find it on the floor? Or perhaps you're trying to use a screenshot of someone else's ticket?" "I printed it at the kiosk." Maya said, her brow furrowing. "Is there a problem? The flight leaves in 40 minutes. "The problem?" Beatrice said, stepping closer. "Invading Maya's personal space is that I have a zero-tolerance policy for scammers. I see girls like you all the time. You think because you have a smartphone, you can hack the system or print a fake pass to get a glass of champagne before we kick you back to row 45. The line behind them was growing restless. A man in a bespoke suit checked his Rolex ostentatiously. "Is there an issue here? We'd like to board." "Just a moment, sir." Beatrice smiled sweetly at the man, then turned her icy gaze back to Maya. "I'm handling a security breach." "It's not a security breach," Maya said, her voice trembling slightly but remaining firm. "Check the computer. My name is on the manifest. Maya Anderson." Beatrice didn't look at the computer. She didn't look at Timothy, the gate agent, who was frantically typing on his keyboard, looking pale. "I don't need to check the computer to know when I'm being lied to," Beatrice hissed. She looked at the heavy card stock in her hands, the ticket that represented a seat worth more than her car. Then, holding Maya's gaze, Beatrice did the unthinkable. Rip! The sound was sharp and final. Beatrice tore the boarding pass down the middle. She put the two halves together and tore them again. She let the confetti-like pieces flutter down onto Maya's battered Converse sneakers. The gate went silent. Even the man in the bespoke suit stopped checking his watch. "There," Beatrice said, dusting her hands off. "Now you have no ticket, which means you are trespassing in a secure area. Get out of my line, or I will have the Port Authority arrest you for fraud." Maya stood frozen. She looked down at the shredded paper, then back up at Beatrice. There was no anger in Maya's eyes, which unnerved Beatrice slightly. Instead, there was a deep, terrifying calm. "You really shouldn't have done that," Maya said quietly. "Are you threatening me?" Beatrice's voice pitched up an octave, seizing the opportunity to play the victim. She turned to the crowd. "Did you hear that? She just threatened a crew member." Timothy, the gate agent, finally found his voice. "Beatrice," he whispered urgently, leaning over the counter. "Beatrice, wait. I'm looking at the manifest. It says here, 'Quiet Timothy.'" Beatrice snapped, not even looking at him. "I am the lead flight attendant on this vessel. I decide who is fit to fly, and this individual is exhibiting aggressive behavior." She reached for the corded phone on the wall and punched in a code. "Security to gate B42. I have a disruptive passenger refusing to vacate the boarding area. Potential ticket fraud." Maya didn't move. She didn't scream, and she didn't cry. She simply knelt down, picked up the largest piece of her torn ticket, the part with the QR code still partially visible, and stood back up. "I'm not aggressive," Maya said, her voice level. "I'm a paying customer. You just destroyed my property." "Property implies you own it." Beatrice smirked, crossing her arms. "That ticket is the property of Vanguard Airways, and as a representative of this airline, I have revoked it." Two Port Authority police officers, Officer Miller and Officer Hernandez, jogged down the concourse, their radios squawking. The crowd parted for them. "What seems to be the problem here?" Officer Miller asked, his hand resting near his belt. He was a large man who looked like he'd rather be eating lunch than dealing with gate drama. "Officer, thank goodness," Beatrice said, instantly shifting her demeanor to that of a distressed professional. "This young woman attempted to board with a fraudulent ticket. When I confronted her, she became hostile. She refused to leave the priority area and then threatened me." Miller turned to Maya. He sized her up, hoodie leggings, messy hair. Then he looked at Beatrice uniform badge's authority. The bias was immediate and subconscious. "Miss," Miller said to Maya, "I need to see your ID and your boarding pass." "I gave her my boarding pass," Maya said, pointing at Beatrice. She ripped it up and threw it on the floor. Miller looked at the scraps of paper on the carpet. He looked back at Beatrice. "It was a fake officer," Beatrice lied effortlessly. "I confiscated it to prevent her from trying to use it again. She snatched it back and tore it herself in a fit of rage." A gasp rippled through the onlookers. It was a brazen lie, but Beatrice delivered it with such conviction that heads began to nod. "That's not true," a woman from the back of the line shouted. "She ripped it." Beatrice glared at the witness. "Please do not interfere with a federal investigation, ma'am, unless you want to be offloaded as well." The witness fell silent, intimidated. Officer Miller sighed. "Miss," he said to Maya, "you need to step out of the line. You're causing a disturbance." "I just want to get on my flight," Maya said. "My father is expecting me in London for dinner." Beatrice laughed, a cruel, harsh sound. "Oh, her father. Did you hear that Daddy is expecting her? Let me guess. Does Daddy own a dealership, or maybe a chain of laundromats?" Maya looked Beatrice dead in the eye. "Something like that." Maya pulled out her phone. "I'm going to make a call." "Put the phone away," Officer Hernandez said, stepping forward. "You need to come with us to the desk so we can sort this out." "I'm allowed to make a phone call," Maya stated firmly. She tapped a contact labeled simply as Dad Personal. Beatrice rolled her eyes. Let her call. Let her call the Tooth Fairy for all I care. She's not getting on Flight 189. Maya put the phone to her ear. The line rang twice. "Maya," a deep, gravelly voice answered. "You boarding. You're cutting it close, kiddo." "Hey, Dad," Maya said, her voice cracking just a fraction. "I'm at the gate. There's a problem. The head flight attendant, she ripped up my ticket. She told the police I'm a fraud and that I threatened her." There was a silence on the other end of the line. A silence so heavy it felt like the air pressure in the terminal dropped. "She did what?" The voice on the phone was no longer warm. It was cold steel. "She said I don't look like I belong in first class. The police are here. They're trying to escort me away." "Put me on speaker," the voice commanded. "Right now." Maya pulled the phone away from her ear and pressed the speaker button. She held it out toward Beatrice and Officer Miller. "My father wants to speak to you," Maya said. Beatrice stepped forward, a mockery of a smile on her face. She leaned toward the phone. "Listen here, sir. I don't know who you think you are, but your daughter is disrupting a federal flight. If you raised her to have some manners, we wouldn't be in this situation. She is not boarding. Period." "Who is this?" The voice on the phone boomed. It wasn't a shout. It was the kind of authoritative projection used by men who commanded rooms of thousands. "This is Beatrice Vanderwall, Senior Purser," she snapped. "And I have the authority to deny boarding to anyone. Now goodbye." Beatrice reached out and aggressively tapped the red End Call button on Maya's screen. The line went dead. Maya stared at the phone. Then she looked at Beatrice. "You really just hung up on him." "I have a schedule to keep," Beatrice said, turning her back on Maya. "Officers, remove her. Timothy, start boarding Group 1. Timothy was shaking. He was staring at his screen where he had finally pulled up Maya's full passenger profile. There, next to her name, was a small, flashing code, VIP001. Board member. Family. Do not downgrade. "Beatrice," Timothy squeaked. "Beatrice, you need to look at this." "Not now, Timothy," Beatrice yelled. Officer Miller grabbed Maya's elbow. "Come on, miss. Let's go. Don't make this hard." Maya didn't resist. She allowed herself to be guided out of the priority lane, past the smirking Beatrice, and over to the sterile grey chairs of the waiting area. She sat down, watching as the wealthy passengers, the ones who looked the part, began to hand their tickets to Timothy and walk down the jet bridge. As Beatrice swiped her badge to open the jet bridge door, she looked back at Maya one last time. "Maybe next time," Beatrice sneered. "Try taking the bus." Maya just sat there, clutching her phone. It buzzed, a text message from her father. "Stay put. Do not leave the gate. I'm making a call to the tower and the station manager. Give me 5 minutes." Maya looked up at the clock. The flight was scheduled to push back in 20 minutes. Beatrice disappeared down the tunnel, feeling victorious, completely unaware that she had just sealed her own fate. The heavy reinforced door of the Boeing 777 thudded shut, sealing the outside world away. For Beatrice, that sound was better than applause. It was the sound of order being restored. She adjusted the silk scarf around her neck and smoothed the front of her blazer. The cabin was bathed in the soft, ambient mood lighting that Vanguard Airways used to simulate a calming sunset, a stark contrast to the grey, wet misery of New York outside. The air smelled of expensive leather, sanitized air, and the crisp citrus notes of the pre-flight champagne she was already uncorking. Beatrice moved through the first-class cabin with the grace of a dancer and the arrogance of a queen. This was her domain. Here she wasn't just a service worker. She was the gatekeeper of luxury. "More champagne, Mr. Sterling," she cooed, leaning over the man in the bespoke suit, the same man who had checked his Rolex impatiently at the gate. "Please, Beatrice," Mr. Sterling smiled, holding out his crystal flute. "And thank you for handling that situation earlier. It's getting harder and harder to fly these days without being accosted by the riffraff." Beatrice poured the golden liquid with practiced, steady hands, watching the bubbles rise. "It is my pleasure, Mr. Sterling. Vanguard prides itself on exclusivity. Some people think that just because they scrape together enough points for a ticket, they belong in this cabin. But we know better, don't we?" She gave him a conspiratorial wink. It was an intoxicating feeling for her, bonding with the wealthy, pretending that for these 8 hours she was one of them, united against the commoners of the world. She walked back to the galley, humming to herself. Her junior flight attendant, a sweet but timid girl named Sarah, was organizing the meal carts. "That was intense at the gate," Sarah ventured quietly, not making eye contact. "The girl, she seemed really calm. Are you sure the ticket was fake?" Beatrice whipped around, her eyes flashing. "Don't start with me, Sarah. You've been flying for 6 months. I have been spotting grifters since before you were born. The girl was a mess. Hoodies in first class, absolutely not. Not on my watch. But looking at the manifest..." Sarah hesitated, holding up the tablet. "Seat 2A is still showing as occupied. The system hasn't cleared her." "The system is slow," Beatrice snapped, snatching the tablet from Sarah's hands and tossing it onto the metal counter. "Forget about Seat 2A. It's empty. That means extra meals for the crew. Now go check on the pilots. We need to push back on time. I want to get to London and put this day behind me." Meanwhile, inside the terminal, the atmosphere was shifting from chaotic to suffocating. Timothy, the gate agent, was no longer standing. He had collapsed into his swivel chair, staring at his monitor with the blood drained from his face. He had finally clicked the hyperlinked profile of Anderson Maya. It wasn't just a VIP tag. It was a dossier. Passenger Anderson. Maya status. Global services. Premier. Relation. Daughter of CEO Richard Anderson. Notes. Direct board access. Do not deny boarding under any circumstances. Timothy felt bile rise in his throat. He looked out the window. The jet bridge had been retracted. The tug truck was already attached to the nose gear of the massive plane. "Oh, God," Timothy whispered. He grabbed the landline phone to call the flight deck. It rang and rang. Inside the cockpit, Captain Reynolds and First Officer Lewis were running through the before start checklist. The cockpit was a symphony of beeps and hums. "APU is running," Lewis said. "Packs are on." The interphone buzzed. Captain Reynolds frowned. "Ignore that. We're 2 minutes behind schedule. Beatrice probably wants to know the flight time again." They ignored the call. Back in the terminal waiting area, Maya sat perfectly still. Officer Miller and Officer Hernandez stood over her, their posture slightly less aggressive than before, but still guarding her like a criminal. "Look, miss," Officer Miller said, looking at his notebook. "If you just give us your real ID, we can process the trespassing charge and let you go with a citation. There's no need to drag this out." Maya didn't look at him. She was watching the plane through the glass. She saw the red beacon light on the bottom of the fuselage start to flash. The plane was waking up. "I'm not giving you my ID because I haven't committed a crime," Maya said softly, "and I advise you to wait exactly." She glanced at her phone. "1 more minute before you file any paperwork." "Listen, lady." Hernandez stepped in his patience, wearing thin. "You're not calling the shots here. You're—" Hernandez's radio squawked, cutting him off. The static was loud in the quiet gate area. "Central to Units 4 Alpha and 4 Bravo at Gate B42. Miller grabbed his shoulder mic. "Go ahead, Central. Hold position. Do not, I repeat, do not process the suspect. We have a code 1099 incoming from airport operations. The station manager is en route to your location. ETA, 30 seconds. Miller and Hernandez exchanged a confused look. A code 1099 wasn't a police code they used often. It meant high-level diplomatic or corporate intervention. "What did you do?" Miller asked Maya, his voice dropping to a whisper. Maya finally looked up at him, her brown eyes cold and hard as flint. "I told you. I called my dad." The rain had picked up, hammering against the glass walls of Terminal 4, blurring the lights of the runway into smears of red and yellow. Down the long corridor of the concourse, the sound of running footsteps broke the low murmur of the travelers. It wasn't the jog of a late passenger. It was the frantic, desperate sprint of a man who knew his career hung in the balance. Arthur Henderson, the Vanguard Airways station manager for JFK, was a man who prided himself on composure. He wore 3-piece suits, kept his silver hair immaculately parted, and never raised his voice. But right now Arthur Henderson was sweating through his Egyptian cotton shirt. He had just received a phone call from Richard Anderson directly. The call had lasted 20 seconds. It was the most terrifying 20 seconds of Arthur's life. He rounded the corner to Gate B42, his chest heaving. He saw the scene immediately. The 2 police officers looming over a young woman in a grey hoodie. The empty gate desk where Timothy was burying his face in his hands. And outside the Boeing 707, beginning to move. "Stop!" Arthur screamed, though the plane couldn't hear him. He didn't run to the police. He didn't run to Timothy. He ran straight to the window, watching the pushback tug slowly reversing the aircraft. He spun around, his face purple. "Timothy, why is that plane moving?" Timothy looked up, tears in his eyes. "Beatrice. She closed the door. She wouldn't listen. I tried to call." Arthur slammed his hand onto the desk, grabbing the direct line to the tower. He didn't dial the gate phone. He dialed the emergency dispatch for ground control. "This is Vanguard Station Manager Henderson," he barked into the receiver. "Emergency stop on Flight 189 at Gate B42. Do not let that plane taxi. I repeat, stop that aircraft immediately. We have an unauthorized departure." He slammed the phone down and turned to the police officers. Officer Miller stepped forward. "Sir, we have the suspect in custody. She refused to—" "Shut up!" Arthur Henderson roared. The violence of the outburst made Officer Miller take a step back. You have who in custody? Arthur walked over to Maya. He didn't look at her clothes. He didn't look at her hair. He looked at the face that he had seen in the company newsletter every Christmas since she was a child. He saw the eyes of the man who owned the building they were standing in. Arthur dropped to one knee. Literally. On the dirty airport carpet, he knelt before the girl in the Converse sneakers. Ms. Anderson, Arthur wheezed, trying to catch his breath. I am devastatingly sorry. I just got off the phone with your father. There has been a terrible, terrible mistake. The entire gate area went silent. The other passengers waiting for different flights stopped eating their sandwiches. The police officers froze. Officer Miller's hand slowly moved away from his belt. Maya looked at Arthur. She didn't smile. She didn't look relieved. She looked exhausted. Mr. Henderson, is it? She asked. Yes, ma'am. Arthur Henderson. My father said you would fix this, but that plane is moving. Arthur stood up, his face grim. Not for long. Inside Flight 189, the safety video was playing on the personal screens. Beatrice was walking through the cabin doing her final compliance checks, ensuring seatbelts were fastened and tray tables were stowed. The plane lurched slightly as the tug pushed it back from the gate. Beatrice smiled. On time, she thought. Perfect. Suddenly the plane stopped. It wasn't the gentle stop of the pushback completing. It was a hard, jarring brake. The china in the galley rattled. A few passengers gasped. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Reynolds's voice came over the PA system. He sounded confused, perhaps even a little annoyed. Sorry for that sudden stop. We've just received an urgent command from ground control to hold our position. Not sure what the issue is, probably traffic on the alleyway. We'll get you moving in a jiffy. Beatrice rolled her eyes. ATC delays, she thought. Classic JFK. She walked to the interphone and called the cockpit. Captain, it's Beatrice. How long are we looking at? Should I break out the water service? I don't know, Beatrice. Reynolds replied, his voice tight. Tower says we have to. Return to the gate. Mandatory order. They aren't giving me a reason. Return to gate? Beatrice huffed. For what? Did we miss a bag? They said it's a security issue involving crew, Reynolds said. Prepare the L1 door for reopening. We're being towed back in. Beatrice slammed the handset back into its cradle. Unbelievable, she muttered to Sarah. Someone probably left their badge in the terminal. Incompetence everywhere. The plane groaned as the tug switched directions, pulling the massive beast back toward the building it had just left. Beatrice put on her professional smile, plastered on and fake, and addressed the first-class cabin. My apologies, everyone. A minor technicality. We have to pop back to the gate for just a moment. Please remain seated. She stood by the L1 door, tapping her foot impatiently. She was already mentally drafting the complaint email she would send to management about this delay. The plane shuddered to a halt. The fasten seatbelt sign pinged. Beatrice waited for the knock from the outside agent. When it came, she disarmed the door, rotated the heavy handle and pushed it open. She expected to see Timothy looking apologetic. Instead, she saw Arthur Henderson, the station manager. His face was pale, his jaw set in a line of fury. Behind him stood 2 Port Authority police officers, the same ones she had called. And standing between them, looking small but casting a shadow that seemed to swallow the entire jet bridge, was the girl in the grey hoodie. Beatrice blinked. What is this? Why is she back? Arthur Henderson didn't step onto the plane. He stood on the metal platform of the jet bridge, blocking the exit. "Miss Van der Waal," Arthur said, his voice carrying into the silent cabin behind her. "Grab your bag." Beatrice laughed nervously. "Excuse me, Arthur, what is going on?" "This passenger was denied boarding for fraud." "Grab your bag," Arthur repeated, enunciating every word with lethal precision. "You are relieved of duty, effective immediately." "You can't do that," Beatrice sputtered, her face flushing red. "I'm the senior purser. You can't offload me for her." "She's a scammer, Beatrice," Arthur said, and this time he stepped forward, bringing Maya with him. "I would like to introduce you to Maya Anderson, the daughter of Richard Anderson, the CEO and majority shareholder of Vanguard Airways." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a silence so profound that the hum of the aircraft's auxiliary power sounded like a roar. Beatrice felt the blood drain from her face. Her knees went weak. She looked at the girl, really looked at her, and for the first time she saw the resemblance. The eyes, the jawline. It was undeniable. "But," Beatrice whispered, her voice trembling. She was wearing a hoodie." Maya stepped forward. She didn't yell. She didn't scream. She spoke calmly so everyone in the first few rows could hear. "I didn't know there was a dress code for buying a ticket," Maya said. "But I do know there's a code of conduct for employees, and you just broke every single line of it." Beatrice looked back at the cabin. Mr. Sterling, the man she had been serving champagne to, was staring at her with open mouth. The entire first-class cabin was watching the implosion of her life. "Captain Reynolds!" Beatrice shrieked, turning toward the cockpit. "Captain, they are removing me. You have to stop them." Captain Reynolds emerged from the cockpit. He looked at Arthur Henderson. He looked at Maya. Then he looked at Beatrice with an expression of cold detachment. "You heard the station manager, Beatrice," the captain said. "Get off my plane." Beatrice stood paralyzed. Her world, built on 25 years of seniority and a false sense of superiority, was crumbling in seconds. "Officer," Arthur nodded to the police. "Please escort Ms. Van der Waal off the aircraft. She is trespassing." As Officer Miller reached out to take Beatrice's arm, the same arm that had aggressively pointed at Maya just an hour ago, Beatrice let out a sob. It wasn't a sob of remorse. It was the sob of someone who realized they had just lost everything. "This isn't fair," Beatrice cried as she was led onto the jet bridge. "I was just doing my job." Maya watched her go. Then she turned to Arthur Henderson. "I need to board now," Maya said. "I'm late for dinner." "Of course, Ms. Anderson," Arthur said, bowing his head. "Please. Seat 2A is ready." Maya stepped onto the plane. But the story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Beatrice wasn't just going to lose her job. She was about to become the catalyst for a purge that would shake the entire airline. And the passengers in first class were about to learn that silence in the face of injustice had a price, too. The walk from the aircraft door to seat 2A was less than 20 feet. But for Maya and for the 12 other passengers in first class, it felt like a mile-long march across a minefield. Maya stepped into the cabin. The air was different now. Before, it had been filled with the low murmur of self-important conversations, the rustling of newspapers and the clinking of pre-flight beverages. Now it was a vacuum. The silence was absolute, heavy and suffocating. She moved slowly. She didn't strut. She didn't glare. She simply walked with the exhaustion of someone who had just fought a war she never asked for. She adjusted her backpack strap, the same faded grey canvas that Beatrice had sneered at, and stopped at the second row. To her right in seat 2B sat Mr. Sterling, the man in the bespoke navy suit, the man who had checked his Rolex while Beatrice shredded her ticket, the man who had laughed when Beatrice made the joke about Maya's father owning a laundromat. Mr. Sterling was currently finding the pattern on the carpet incredibly fascinating. He refused to look up. His hands, manicured and adorned with a platinum wedding band, were gripping the armrests so tightly his knuckles were white. Maya placed her bag in the overhead bin. She didn't slam it. She closed it with a soft click. Then she sat down. The leather was cool and soft. The seat was wide, a throne designed for captains of industry. Sarah, the junior flight attendant, who had been terrified in the galley, appeared at Maya's elbow instantly. Sarah was trembling. She held a silver tray with a glass of champagne and a warm towel. "Miss Anderson." Sarah's voice was a whisper, shaking. I brought you the vintage Dom Perignon and a warm towel. Is there anything else I can get you? A pillow? A different meal?" Maya looked at Sarah. She saw a young woman who was likely paying off student loans, terrified of losing her livelihood because of her supervisor's prejudice. "Thank you, Sarah," Maya said gently. She took the towel but waved away the champagne. "Just water, please, sparkling if you have it." "Of course, immediately." Sarah practically ran to the galley. As Sarah left, Mr. Sterling finally worked up the courage to speak. He cleared his throat, a wet, nervous sound. He turned his head slightly, putting on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was the smile of a man trying to negotiate a settlement after being caught embezzling. "Ms. Anderson," Sterling said, his voice oily. I wanted to say that was truly unfortunate. What happened back there? That woman, Beatrice. She was clearly unstable. I had a feeling something was off about her." Maya turned her head slowly. She looked at Mr. Sterling. She looked at his expensive suit, his silk tie, his polished shoes. "You had a feeling?" Maya asked, her voice low enough that he had to lean in to hear. "Yes, absolutely." Sterling nodded vigorously. "I mean the way she spoke to you. It was unacceptable. If I had known who you were—" He stopped. The words hung in the air like toxic smoke. Maya smiled, but it was a smile that could cut glass. "If you had known who I was." She repeated the words slowly. "That's the problem, isn't it, Mr. Sterling? If I were a random student or just a girl saving up for a special trip, you would have been fine with it. You were fine with it. You checked your watch." "Now wait a minute," Sterling stammered, his face reddening. "I was just eager to board. I have a meeting in London." "We all have places to be," Maya interrupted, turning her body fully toward him. "You watched a woman destroy my property and humiliate me. You laughed when she insulted my father. You didn't speak up because you thought I didn't matter. You thought I was trash because I'm wearing a hoodie and you're wearing a suit." Sterling opened his mouth, but no words came out. "My father," Maya continued, her voice gaining a steely edge, "is Richard Anderson. He built this airline on the principle that travel opens the mind. But clearly for some people, it just inflates the ego. Enjoy your flight, Mr. Sterling. I have a feeling it's going to be a very long 7 hours for you." She pressed the button to raise the privacy divider between their seats. The mechanical whir of the partition rising was the final gavel strike. Mr. Sterling was left staring at a grey wall alone with his shame. The plane finally pushed back, resuming the journey that had almost been aborted. As the engines roared to life and the aircraft taxied to the runway, the captain came over the PA system. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Reynolds. We are cleared for departure. We apologize for the delay and the Personnel change at the gate. We will be making up time in the air." His voice sounded strained. He knew that the passenger in 2A was not just a VIP. She was a witness, and the cockpit voice recorder was rolling. As the plane lifted off, climbing through the grey rain into the bright sunlight above the clouds, Maya didn't look out of the window. She pulled out her phone, connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi, and opened her email. She had a message from her father. Subject: landing. Message: I'm in London. I flew the Gulf Stream. I'll meet you at the gate. We have a meeting with the UK regional team, and I've already called HR in New York. Rest. I'll handle the welcome party. Maya put her phone down and closed her eyes. She wasn't happy. She wasn't triumphant. She was tired. She realized that money could buy a first-class ticket, and it could even buy an airline, but it couldn't buy basic human decency. That apparently was still in short supply. The flight across the Atlantic was smooth, but the atmosphere inside the first-class cabin was brittle. No one asked for refills. No one pressed the call button. The passengers ate their meals in silence, avoiding eye contact with seat 2A. They were terrified that any wrong move, any slightly too loud chew or misplaced elbow would result in them being banned from the airline for life. When the landing gear deployed with a heavy thud over London Heathrow, the tension ratcheted up again. The plane taxied to Terminal 2, the Queen's Terminal. Usually when the seatbelt sign turned off, there was a mad scramble of passengers standing up to grab their bags. Not today. When the chime dinged, Maya remained seated. And because she remained seated, everyone else remained seated. It was an unspoken acknowledgement of hierarchy. The riffraff in the hoodie was now the captain of the ship. The L1 door opened, but instead of the usual rush of cool English air and the sound of ground staff, 3 men in dark suits walked onto the plane. They weren't flight attendants. They weren't cleaners. They were corporate security. Behind them walked a man who dominated the space. He was 6'3" black with salt and pepper hair and a beard that was perfectly groomed. He wore a charcoal wool coat over a turtleneck. He didn't look like a businessman. He looked like a monarch. It was Richard Anderson. The captain who had emerged from the cockpit to say goodbye to the passengers froze. He extended a hand nervously. "Mr. Anderson, sir. I didn't know you were in London. We had a smooth flight." Richard Anderson looked at the captain's hand, then looked at the captain's face. He did not shake the hand. "Captain Reynolds," Richard said, his voice a deep rumble that carried through the silent cabin. "You've been with us for 12 years. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir. 13 in May. 13 years." Richard nodded slowly. "And in 13 years you never learned that the captain is responsible for the safety and dignity of every passenger. You let a purser abuse a young woman on your jet bridge, and you only intervened when the station manager stopped the plane." "Sir, I was in the cockpit. I didn't see—" Reynolds stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "You are the captain," Richard cut him off. "Ignorance is not a defense. It is a failure of command. We will discuss your future at the debriefing. It is mandatory. Do not go to your hotel." Reynolds went pale and stepped back, flattening himself against the cockpit door. Richard walked past him into the first-class cabin. He stopped at row 2. Maya stood up. She looked small next to him, but her posture was identical. "Hi, Dad," she said quietly. Richard's face softened instantly. The corporate titan vanished, replaced by a father. He pulled her into a hug, holding her tight, shielding her from the gaze of the room. "I'm sorry, baby girl," he whispered. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that." "I'm okay," she muffled into his coat. "I just want to go home." "We're going," he said. He pulled back and looked at her, checking her face for tears. Finding none, he nodded with pride. "Let's go." He took her backpack from the overhead bin, an act of service that shocked the onlookers, the CEO carrying a battered canvas bag. As they turned to leave, Richard paused. He looked at the cabin. He looked at the faces of the 12 people sitting there. He looked specifically at Mr. Sterling in 2B, who was currently trying to shrink into a molecular state. Richard didn't yell. He didn't make a scene. He simply spoke to the room. "I built Vanguard Airways to connect people," Richard said calmly. "We hold our employees to the highest standard. But looking around this cabin, I see that we have work to do on our culture. And culture isn't just about who we hire. It's about who we fly." He locked eyes with Sterling. "Silence is complicity," Richard said. "When you see injustice and you say nothing because it doesn't affect you or because the victim doesn't look like you, you are part of the problem. I hope the champagne was worth it." He put a hand on Maya's shoulder. "Come on." They walked off the plane. The 3 security guards followed. As soon as they were on the jet bridge, the facade of the calm CEO cracked slightly. Richard pulled out his phone. "Arthur." He spoke into the device, addressing the NY station manager. "I have Maya. We are clear. I want a full audit of Beatrice Vanderwall's employment history on my desk by morning. Every complaint, every write-up, every misunderstanding she's ever had. And Arthur." He paused, walking past the bowing Heathrow ground staff. "Find out who the other gate agents were, the ones who watched. I want them interviewed. If they confirm they were intimidated by her, they get retraining. If they confirm they laughed along with her, fire them. Cause." He hung up. They walked through the private VIP immigration channel, a quiet corridor of frosted glass and marble floors. "You didn't have to come," Maya said, adjusting her pace to match his. "I could have handled it." "I know you could," Richard said. "You handled it better than I would have. I would have torn the terminal down, brick by brick." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "But Maya, this isn't just about you. If she did this to you, my daughter, a global services member, imagine what she's been doing to people who don't have a direct line to the CEO. Imagine the grandmothers she's harassed, the students she's embarrassed, the people she's kicked off because she didn't like their tone." Maya stopped walking. She thought about the way Beatrice had looked at her. It wasn't just annoyance. It was contempt. It was a deep-seated belief that Maya could not possibly be equal to her. "She called me a fraud," Maya said softly. "She didn't even check the computer. She just saw me and decided I was a criminal." "That's why I'm here," Richard said. "We aren't just firing her, Maya. We're going to make an example of her, and we're going to change the policy. No more discretionary denials without a supervisor present. We're going to fix the system." They reached the curb where a black Range Rover was waiting. The driver opened the door. "But first," Richard said, gesturing for her to get in, "we have one stop to make before the hotel." "Where?" Maya asked, climbing into the plush leather interior. "The Vanguard Regional Office," Richard said, his jaw tightening. "The video of the incident at JFK. Someone recorded it. A passenger in the terminal. It's already on Twitter. It has 3 million views." Maya's eyes widened. "Oh no." "Oh yes," Richard grimaced. "The world is watching, Maya. Beatrice made you famous. Now we have to control the narrative before the stock market opens in New York." The car pulled away from the curb, sliding into the rainy London traffic. Maya looked out the window. She had just wanted to get to London for a quiet dinner. Instead, she had become the face of a movement. And Beatrice Vanderwall, sitting in a security office back at JFK, stripped of her badge and her dignity, was about to realize that going viral was the worst thing that could have ever happened to her. 3 days later, the storm had not passed. It had evolved into a hurricane. The video of Beatrice Vanderwall screaming at Maya Anderson had been viewed 40 million times. It was on CNN, the BBC, and the front page of Reddit. The hashtag Vanguard Voices was trending not with complaints, but with thousands of stories from other passengers sharing similar experiences of discrimination. Beatrice sat in her Queen's apartment, the curtains drawn tight against the daylight. She wore a stained bathrobe, a stark contrast to the pristine navy uniform that now hung in plastic at the back of her closet, a uniform she would never wear again. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. It wasn't friends offering support. It was reporters. It was angry internet trolls. It was her landlord asking about the noise. She had received her termination letter via courier that morning. It was brutal in its brevity, gross misconduct, violation of civil rights, immediate termination with cause. With cause meant no severance, no golden parachute, and because the incident involved potential violation of federal aviation access laws, her flight attendant certification was under review by the FAA. She wasn't just fired from Vanguard. She was effectively blacklisted from the sky. 25 years of seniority gone in the time it took to rip a piece of paper. On her television, a press conference was starting. Richard Anderson stood at a podium in the Vanguard headquarters lobby. Next to him stood Maya. She looked different, stronger. She wasn't hiding in a hoodie today. She was wearing a sharp blazer, looking every bit the heiress and future leader she was. "We cannot change the past," Richard spoke into the microphones, his voice grave. "But we can change the future. The behavior exhibited by our former employee was a symptom of a systemic failure to value human dignity over status." Maya stepped forward to the microphone. Beatrice watched, mesmerized by the girl she had called a fraud. "I didn't want to be a story," Maya said, her voice clear and steady. "I just wanted to see my dad. But if my experience can prevent this from happening to someone who doesn't have a CEO on speed dial, then it was worth it." "Today," Richard announced, "Vanguard is implementing the Open Sky initiative, mandatory bias training for all 40,000 employees, a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory profiling. And we are establishing an independent oversight committee led by Maya to review all denied boarding complaints." Beatrice turned off the TV. The silence in her apartment was deafening. She had spent her career looking down on people convinced she was the gatekeeper of an exclusive club. Now the club had thrown her out, and the girl she'd tried to shame was rewriting the rules. Beatrice looked at the shredded pieces of her own life, realizing too late that dignity isn't determined by the price of a ticket, but by how you treat the person holding it. Beatrice Vanderwall thought she was protecting the prestige of her airline. In reality, she was exposing the rot within her own character. The story of Maya Anderson isn't just a tale of a wealthy girl getting revenge. It is a stark reminder that we never truly know who we are dealing with. We judge people by their clothes, their age, or the color of their skin, often forgetting that the most powerful people in the room are often the quietest. Maya used her privilege not to destroy Beatrice, but to dismantle the system that allowed people like Beatrice to thrive. Justice was served not just in the firing of one bitter employee, but in the transformation of an entire culture. It costs absolutely nothing to be kind. But as Beatrice learned, it can cost you everything to be cruel. If you believe that respect should be the default, not an upgrade, hit that like button right now. It helps get this message out to more people. Have you ever been judged unfairly based on how you looked? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want more stories about instant karma and justice served, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind, because you never know who you're talking to.